Welcome to the Upstate Interview Series. I'm Luke Perry. Today, I'm very fortunate to have three of my students from Utica College with me. I've asked them all to briefly introduce themselves as we get started. Audra?
Hi everyone, my name is Audra Williams. I am from Clinton, New York, and I am a senior.
Hi, I'm Peter Gahan. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area in California, and I'm also a senior.
Hi, I'm Quinn Beaver. I am a senior from Whitesboro, New York.
So the first question I wanted to begin with is to help our audience understand a little bit where each of our students are coming from. So my first question will begin with Quinn. Why did you come to Utica College?
I actually had a bit of a different path coming to Utica College, and I found that the reason that I decided to come to Utica College is actually what had the greatest impact on me, I think, in my education in undergrad. I had in high school, my senior year, I had all intention of going to a huge university, thinking I wanted to go really far away from home. And I actually started at the University of Vermont. I went there for a semester, and it wasn't the experience I was looking for. I was one of 600 faces in an auditorium in every single one of my classes. I had no personal connection to any of my professors, other students, and it wasn't exactly what I was looking for in terms of undergrad. I wanted to have that personal connection, especially coming from such a small school district in New York where I'm what I was used to. And I realized that's what best served me in terms of learning and what I was hoping to get out of my undergrad experience. So I actually decided to come home and come to Utica College to have that one-on-one connection with all my professors. And I found that in the end, as I had anticipated, had the best impact on me and my growth as a student and being able to succeed in undergrad.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, I actually echoing what Quinn said a little bit. One of the big draws for me to Utica College was the size and the personal attention. I was coming from a large California high school, and all the schools kind of out west that I was looking at that I were interested in, I would have found myself in that same boat, at least in the beginning of my college career, of being one of many. Kind of being labeled more as a number and as a grade and less as a person with interests and passions and complexity. So I was really, when I was applying to schools, trying to find small schools that I thought I could still have a big impact on, that I thought could prepare me for a global world, but in a tight-knit community. And so when I was applying to Utica College, one thing that Utica did that none of the other schools did was they put me directly in contact with faculty. I actually talked to Dr. Perry during my application process. And then I also talked to Professor Schoonmaker in the geoscience department. And collectively, they were able to find a way to marry my two passions while going to school. And then they remembered me when I came to campus and I visited. And I had people like Dean Varga, who recognized me from emails even before I'd actually come to campus. So that caring about me, that knowing who I was, that trying to find a way to make this community work for them and work for me was absolutely what brought me to UC and absolutely what's kept me at UC for the last 4 years.
Thank you, Peter. I remember that conversation fondly, and we were all very happy that you chose to come to Utica College. Audra?
Originally, when I came to Utica College, I was a nursing major. So Utica College has a wonderful science program, and that's what drew me here. However, it kind of shifted. I was really into politics, and I took a class with Professor Perry. So in the end, the reason I came to UC was for science, but now I have stayed at Utica College because of the one-on-one connections that we do have with professors. I mean, Professor Perry has been there every step of the way throughout the last 3 years since I switched majors, and it has kept me interested every single step of the way.
Thank you very much. And certainly politics is a shared interest of all of ours. And one of the things I get asked when I'm doing different media appearances is, what do my students think about this issue or that issue? And one of the benefits of this particular forum is to turn it over to you all to share what's on your mind. Obviously, over the last several years, there's been a variety of challenges facing the United States. And so what are the key issues on your minds? Peter, you want to get us started?
Sure. So anytime this question comes up, I have the one that I always go to, and it's the one that I stand by and genuinely believe is the most pressing issue generally, and since all issues are political, it's the most important political issue, and I believe it's the most important issue globally, but also nationally, and that's climate change. I think the realities of climate change are starting to hit people a little bit more at home. We're starting to recognize the way it's affecting our weather, affecting natural disasters, affecting the way we interact with the world. Texas and the tragedy down there with the winter storm is an excellent example of the consequences of climate change and the lack of government preparedness to respond to those potential tragedies. So that's always been a passion of mine. That's always been something that I've cared about. But in recent years, something that's kind of sprung up as I think also an important issue because it's so interconnected to many other issues is this movement away from, or this vilification of, expertise. This idea that academia is elitist as opposed to a way to better understand ourselves in the world, I think has made it harder for us as a body politic to respond to issues of climate change, to respond to the pandemic, to develop better economic rights and economic justice, because the experts, the academics, the data, the facts are all having to compete or push back against institutions that have shut them out in favor of the places and spaces where they're either feeling like they're being recognized, even if they're being recognized for things that simply aren't true, or they're finding ways to profit off of the misinformation that they dispel.
Thank you, Peter. Quinn, what do you think?
Yeah, mine kind of goes off of Peter's a little bit in terms of global change in the environment and everything, but mine's a little more directed towards healthcare. And I'm very interested in health and wellness. And after studying political science, that's where I kind of hope to take my political science interest, is more into like healthcare, farming, wellness, overall well-being and all that. So I think taking more of a healthcare approach to it. And I think in terms of people relying too much on the healthcare system and not taking it so much into their own hands. So it kind of combines the global warming, environment, climate change with the healthcare system and how those two are so interconnected. And I think even in terms of the pandemic we're facing now, getting help to the right places and the amount of farms and local businesses and places that are struggling, and that could really have that direct impact on healthcare and fixing the problem from the start rather than relying on the ultimate end goal from the government.
Thank you. Audra?
I'm going to shift a little bit. One of the most current issues that I think is really important is racial injustice that's happening in the United States, especially, and of course worldwide. As we have seen over the past year, African Americans have been leading the way for what has hoped to be, a change in policy, especially pertaining to the police. And while certain areas have taken that especially seriously, there are many others that have not, and police brutality has continued, which is just, and on top of that, now we've had an increase in Asian American hate crimes that are happening because you've seen political rhetoric fuel fires in certain communities that have led to people believing that certain individuals, such as Asian Americans, are the reason that the coronavirus is currently in the United States. So that's my main issue.
Thank you. Certainly this century, in the last few years in particular, has been remarkable in a lot of ways. And I've really enjoyed working with all three of you over the years with your different experiences and your different perspectives on these challenging issues. I'd like to talk a little bit about political science in particular and why you think that discipline or mode of analysis is important, helpful, beneficial in trying to make sense of some of these challenges and how to potentially resolve them. Quinn, do you want to get us started on that one?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues that we see nowadays is people relying so heavily on social media and news outlets and getting their information. There's so much information funneled through, so much information coming at you all at once. And I think that having that education and true knowledge behind it, whether that's historically, factually, I think it adds an important perspective when people are making their own decisions and deciding which ways to stand by, which ones not to support. And I think it's important to have that true knowledge behind it rather than trying to filter through just media based, just biased opinions. And I think that that's one of the things I found as I progressed through my education is how much of a deeper understanding I'm able to have and the deeper connections I'm able to make with it and seeing what may be true, what might be not. And I think it's helped me the most and filtering through all that information as social media and news just progresses as we time goes on.
It's a remarkable moment in history that we are experiencing in terms of having so much information at our fingertips and being able to get all types of different sets of data and facts, as well as a whole bunch of opinions and other information too. And so the challenge, I think, as you identified, is how to sort through that and what tools can be used in that process. Certainly political science can be helpful in understanding political behavior by looking at empirically what has happened and try to understand what is currently going on and what may happen. Audra, what do you think about political science and how it's helpful in this current moment?
Yeah, echoing kind of off of what Quinn said. So sorting through all the news outlet medias, everything that is at our fingertips currently, there's so much information, and knowing the decisions that go into sending out this information as well, I think is really important because we don't realize how much time and effort is put into just the smallest political governmental decisions that happen. And the news medias, they don't report that there's different committees, there's different subcommittees that take time to review and go through and do different polls. So knowing how things are made better gives me a better understanding when I do read, a news article from, hopefully a reputable site, that I can look further into it instead of just seeing it at the surface level.
And politics today, unfortunately, from my perspective, is a bit of a buzzword. It's a negative adjective. But I think as you illustrate, politics is really a process of collective decision making. So whether we're talking about a local government decision at a school board level or a very big decision at a presidential level, there's multiple people and factors and policies and history that goes into that. And certainly the more someone can understand that, the better they can interpret what's going on around them. Peter, what do you think?
I agree with Audra and Quinn, absolutely. I also think that having kind of compared the education I've been able to get in political science since coming to college with the civics education I got like in high school, one of the key virtues to studying politics and to studying political institutions is in college, you're given a much wider breadth of options and histories and narratives. It always felt like in high school, we were getting a very kind of limited view of what had happened, what could potentially happen, what were policy subscriptions to issues. And it was very much just based around that's what the curriculum allotted for, that's what the time allotted for, that's what the knowledge base of the educator allotted for. But by coming to college and getting to work with experts from a range of different kind of lenses through which they view politics, being able to take classes entirely based on political philosophy or political ideologies, moving away from the core structures, but then also being able to take classes like political or international organizations that talk about all the different ways in which these ideologies interact in a more concrete way. I feel like I'm leaving college knowing more, which is good. That's the point of an education, but also understanding how the one way you've heard or the one narrative you've heard is just one of many, and that oftentimes an outcome or a solution or a way to resolve a problem often has to incorporate a lot of ideas from a lot of different narratives. And I think one of the shortcomings right now in American politics, but also just kind of generally in discourse, is everyone's so self-aware of their own narrative and lacks so little awareness about everyone else's narrative. It's very hard to reach that collective decision-making point because they haven't gotten the education that we get, where we hear from all these different perspectives and we learn to argue and justify all these different perspectives in class.
I think that's a great point. Civics, particularly in high school, is a lot of names and dates, and it's kind of surface level analysis, which makes sense. And then you get to college and you're challenged to rethink everything. And we as professors are trying to encourage students and teach them how to think better. And at the end of the day, I don't care what people's individual perspectives are. I'm trying to develop their intellectual skills. And it's quite fun when somebody articulates a point of view and then I get to say, okay, argue the opposite point of view for the intellectual benefit of that, as I'm sure you all recall. So I'd like to return to a little bit more of your stories with this theme of political science. And if you could just share a little bit why each of you decided to study political science. What about this discipline appealed to you? Audrey, you want to get us started on that, please?
Yeah, so the reason I chose political science is because politics and governmental decisions is no longer one group, as Peter's kind of outlined. It's for everyone at this point. And just knowing how decisions are made, knowing how you can help out in your community, locally, then state, and then nationally, it makes the country, I believe, a better place because it's not just one person making decisions for everyone, and it can help you in the end. So I believe that political science is for everyone, and it's for me.
Thank you. Certainly something, particularly with introductory students, I try to impress upon them is that, like it or not, politics is all around you. If you're interacting with more than one human being, that person's not going to have an identical point of view. So the better you can understand power and how it's being implemented, the better you could, as you referenced, Audra, bring about positive collective change, but also the better you can get what it is you want. And that's certainly something I try to pitch to our introductory students. Peter, what do you think?
I came to political science. I had always had an interest in history and politics, and that I very much owe to my upbringing. I had parents that were very politically aware, constantly reading and watching the news and making sure that I was aware of what was happening in the world from a very young age. But especially as I kind of came into my own end of middle school, into high school, I was the activist with an end goal, but didn't have the proper form to win the race. I knew where I wanted to end up. I was involved in a lot of community organizing, community actions, trying to develop economic rights and economic justice and a better social safety net and increase union membership amongst low-income and immigrant populations. And I spent a lot of time advocating on behalf of environmental rights and environmental justice and attending Black Lives Matter protests. But I very much felt like there was that viral video that went out many years ago of an interviewer going around to the Occupy protests and going, "Why are you here?" And no one could really give an answer. They knew something was wrong, but they didn't really know how to fix it. They just knew there was a problem and they were going to protest that problem and hoping that the experts would then do something to fix it. Well, I wanted to be one of those experts that could help fix the problems that I knew existed. So I studied political science so I could get the education, get the training, so I had the form to finish the race and hopefully to bring a bunch of people along with me to whatever that better end goal was. So to me, this was very much let's get the tools and the experience and the knowledge base to be able to take what I know to be true, what I know to be right, what I know to be correct, and turn it into something much more concrete.
Thank you. And certainly when people think about what subject area to study, they tend to focus on content and knowledge. But I think as you emphasize, it's just as much skills that you're going to develop with the discipline that you choose to study in college. Quinn?
Yeah, kind of the same as Peter. I grew up in a household that was very political based. My dad studied political science, studied law, so I've always been around that, and that's kind of what I'm used to. And I think especially growing up in Oneida County in our area, we have a very political driven place. Locals are very into politics, very into elections. We take it very seriously. So I think just being surrounded by it growing up, it kind of sparked my interest. And then I saw how interconnected politics was to any sort of interest that I have, how I can take politics and shift it to be more specific to certain interests I have at different times in my life, and just what a broad knowledge base you can grasp from it. I think I liked the different variability within the field and just understanding how much of an impact I can have with it.
Thank you. It's certainly a common thread, as a few of you have mentioned, that if you grow up in a household that talks politics, and that was my case as well, that certainly correlates with gravitating towards the discipline. But at the same time, even though that's a big chunk of the students we tend to get, I also find it interesting when there's people who haven't had that experience and then they stumble into an introductory class and they say, "Whoa, these are the types of things I've been wanting to talk about. Now I found my people to do it with." So that's also very interesting as well. Well, in closing, I'd like you all, if you don't mind, sharing just a bit about what's next. We began the conversation as you shared being seniors, so sharing what your future aspirations are, I think, would be of great interest. And if Peter, you could get us started, that'd be great.
Yeah, so that's been front of the mind and been a lot of conversations I've been having lately, as I'm sure Audra and Quinn have as well, we go into our last semester. I know I right now am having the oh so joyous and rewarding experience of applying for jobs during a pandemic, and hearing back from a lot of them saying we're not hiring right now because
Love to have
pandemic.
ya.
Yeah, you're a great candidate, you're very qualified, apply back in a year. It's like, cool, I will definitely do that, but until then, I have been able to find my way into potentially a couple of positions related to service. I have found right now, because of the pandemic, a lot of service organizations, a lot of government groups are looking for, kind of boots on the ground action, not directly related to necessarily the field that I worked in. But for example, looks like for at least a few months, I might actually be working with FEMA to help the vaccination distribution and to respond to natural disasters, which are exponentially worse right now during a pandemic, because the response to natural disasters are so affected by what's happening in the world. Because of the experience in emergency management, I got kind of on the job training when the school went into a shutdown, and I was the student representative during a lot of those early meetings and early decisions. So that's kind of the immediate next step. The long-term next step is to come back to politics, specifically trying to work in either an academic institution doing research or not-for-profit doing advocacy relating to either economic rights or environmental justice. Do that for a few years and then potentially head back to graduate school to complete a PhD in specifically environmental politics, to then hopefully develop that into a research position and a teaching position somewhere.
Excellent. That certainly sounds like meaningful work, both in the short term and the long term. And I can empathize any more with all of you in terms of the job market that you're facing. It's been such a challenging century. 10 years prior, graduating seniors were dealing with the Great Recession. So it is a remarkably challenging moment, but I'm sure you all meet the moment and overcome. Audra, do you want to share?
Yeah, so while I may not be going into politics directly, I am going to go to grad school for cyber management, and hopefully some of the programs offer policy as well, which will then have a turnaround, and I will use both my political science bachelor's and then my cyber master's to work hopefully in the government and do cyber policy, as cyber is a really huge up and coming field, and as we are all now moving to online living, we are seeing an increase in cyber attacks, and someone needs to figure that out and how to help protect our government, our critical assets and infrastructures, and hopefully that will be me.
Excellent. Certainly, cybersecurity is such a growing field, and it relates to government, business, society, communication, all these different areas for sure. Thank you. Quinn?
Yep. So like Audra, I will be avoiding the real world for just a little bit longer. And this fall, I will be attending Syracuse Law School. So I'll be there for 3 more years. And I think long term, I'm not exactly sure what I want to do practicing law, but I think I want to do something with healthcare, environment, whatever that may be. But we have some time to figure that out. But I will be attending law school first.
Congratulations, Quinn. We're all very happy for you. And I am all very proud of each of you. It's been such a pleasure to work with you. This has been a fabulous conversation. Thank you all very much. And thank you for watching. For more, you can go to ucpublicaffairs.com.